45 minutes, an hour, but I want to leave a lot of space for questions because I think it's a very interesting topic, and there's not only one opinion. I try to bring a couple of facts in and try to give you the best overview as possible. All right. Now, when originally we thought around digitalization or digitization, I thought, well, it's interesting that people are bringing this up and bring up, okay, a digital strategy now, it's a digital transformation strategy, something extremely new. And then I'm thinking back like 20 years, 25 years, we've already started the whole journey in a lot of companies with a topic around IT enablement, which wasn't really different, right? We tried to put manual processes into a machine process, and we try to automate wherever we could in order to help basically to operate and to do things faster. That then went into the IT enablement, went into, I mean, obviously it was a CIO topic, and at some point in time, companies started to put a chief digitization officer in. But I think the key change to now, the interesting change is that the topic reached the boardroom, reaches CEO level, and it's not anymore a topic for just the boiler room in the back. But the concepts are, I don't think, so utterly different, apart from some innovations around, obviously, new algorithms around blockchain and or artificial intelligence. But even those conversations we had years back. Now, before I get into that, just maybe a quick intro. My name is Michael Glück. I'm German. I'm living in the region now for 13 years. I've been starting my career in the year 2000, just on the height of the internet bubble, coming from university, wanting to start a business. And then I somehow got sidetracked into consulting. I started with McKinsey, was there for 10 years, joined then in the region with them, or moved over in the region with them to build up the Middle East office. And worked then there in all different type of countries, including Egypt. And moved then over to Cisco, working as a CSO for the emerging markets, which also Egypt was part of that one, but we had a broad portfolio from Russia up down to Johannesburg. Super interesting time that we had here. We obviously ran through a lot of the woes of the Arab Spring in the same way, and gladly we are out of that now. Before there was financial crisis, now we're like another crisis. But it's interesting how the region moves, and since about 4 years, I'm with SAP leading the industry value advisory, which is a part of the sales organization where we help customers truly understand what value digital or digitization can bring to them, or which value it can't bring to them, and so that they can take a informed decision. Now, with that. I just wanted to bring a couple of fact points in here. We know that, or there was some research out, and a lot of companies are actually understanding that digitization is important to them, in particular if they want to exist going forward and they don't want to be disrupted by any of the competitors. However, the interesting thing still is about 2/3 of digitization strategies or digital transformation plans do fail, and companies are not getting the value out of that they actually want to. And there are multiple different factors, and we can talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but I find this very interesting. The other stats that I want to bring to you is why is it important to be a digital leader, or to be at least a digital follower. You don't need to be the first mover in there, but you need to be at least among the 2-3 fast followers in that. It's just because value creation here estimated is happening only in the leader quintile, right? And everything below McKinsey estimates of that long-term value or long-term economic profit is actually declining if you're not getting on par with the digital leaders in your field or with the digital followers in your field, right? And that's, I think that's not only interesting, but that's sometimes scary, but I think it also opens up opportunity. But I think you need to have open eyes for that. The next thing is, yes, that was all the plan before the pandemic, right? And then the pandemic actually came, hit different parts of the world. You see on the right-hand side a little bit the curves within here, the MENA region. I take the wider view in Pakistan as well. And we see how the case numbers are basically progressing. The thick yellow line here is Egypt. For me, very interesting to see how Egypt itself is moving. You guys don't seem to be hit strongly by the pandemic itself. I mean, there are quite a number of cases, but all in all, the curve is very strongly and very shallow now. You didn't really get the huge outbreaks. And that is interesting, and I always ask my friend and colleague, Dr. Ashraf, why is that? Whether there's like, a specific Egyptian DNA from the pharaohic times helping you to bypass that. I think, in fairness, looking at what at the moment happens in Germany, I think you've been lucky. And I come to that in a point, because I think at the moment, I think you're relatively good isolated from the health impact. Unfortunately, the financial impact is happening around foreign direct investments, around remittances, capital that is coming from the outside world coming back into Egypt, which is going down, around the oil or the gas investments from the exports from outside. And most importantly, the tourism is going down, right? And basically hits the economy. Now the economy is still growing, and you still feel that, which is great. I mean, in all honesty, bless you for really pushing through. I think it's also like, where we're coming from. There's a lot of movement still in the economy that can happen. But I think we also shouldn't close our eyes in a sense of, the risk is still there, and coming in a second to the curves and what's expected for the future. By the way, I would love if you have a question or so, let me just quickly check with you whether you're unmuted, or you can. I think all of you should be able to talk. Just in case you want to ask a question, please interrupt. I'm just checking here the chat whether there's been any questions. Okay, no. So one of the, I mean, you probably have seen this before. It cruises around the internet for about a couple of months now. Who is the leader of digital transformation of the company itself? Was the CEO or the CTO, or was it the CEO of it? And it's more or less that now COVID is really accelerating the developments. And another chart here, you see the impact basically itself. This is a stock market. On EGX, there have been obviously very interesting movements in the past, but very, very strong growth. I mean, that's where you really see where Egypt is like picking up. But the biggest daily drop was when the pandemic basically hit. So it has impact, it has economic impact. The next chart also shows, I find this very interesting in terms of seeing how the daily case rates in Egypt are moving and what impact it has to different type of sectors or different type of spending ratios, or different type of community movement ratios, right? So when you clearly see in the heights of it, retail and recreation was really at the limit. Now at around negative like 10%. Workspaces are utilized here in the range mid-year, the range like 20% less. That has still like slightly less is still on the decline, about 5%, but it has recovered. There's a good website for that one on the McKinsey side, which actually tracks a lot of countries around the world. I can recommend that. You will also hear me a lot talking about the McKinsey stuff, not because it's the absolute great and the only wisdom, but McKinsey has been putting a lot of effort in putting data around the pandemic into the world, and they're consolidating a lot of the data, which other companies haven't. So I use a lot, quite some of their material. All right. Then what is interesting is looking into the different industries, right? And industries have been differently affected and differently impacted and have different implications to that. What you see here on the slide is the the market cap changes of the various industries. So companies that are stock listed have a certain market capitalization, and what the firm has been doing is just checking the market capitalization and how it moved over time, over the pandemic, in terms of whether it still shrank or it's up. Yeah, so you just basically look at the blue one and dark blue one, and at the right hand side, like this should be dark blue as well, pharmaceuticals and high tech, on the positive side. The interesting thing is you can clearly see here the different industries and whether those are on the losing side of the pandemic versus on the winning side. And if you aren't, which I assume, and probably some of these, then you see basically, you know, where typically our customers have their priority. And on the right-hand side, clearly, I mean, air travel and transportation look like not logistics, but tourism, as well as even commercial aerospace is down, very strongly down. I mean, you see that worldwide there are already like 2 or 3 of the big players are on Chapter 11. What also was interesting is what also was clear was the oil and gas area was down, because just before the pandemic, we had this oil price war between Saudi and Russia, and Saudi and the US. So natural resources prices have been shrinking below a lot of countries' fiscal neutrality points, right? Fiscal finance budgeting points. Banks are down because the market expects a lot of insolvencies still to come on the one hand side, and on the other side, a lot of the countries have been asking the banks to pick up the slack and give some of the companies that they support a free lending, or at least more time in terms of the repayments. So this is all revenues that has been taken out of the top line of banks, and that's why the banking's down. So a lot of these companies on the left-hand side are fighting around survival, and so focus is very strongly resiliency, working capital, profitability in there. Right-hand side is more the winner side, right? High tech, you see that in the Nasdaq, a lot of the high tech players are, especially the ones that are in distance programs or distance entertaining, like Netflix and Amazon. They are on the rise. Consumer services, pharmaceutical, clear. I don't know why why media is the case, but retail is pretty much split. There's luxury retail, which is really down. There is some of the retail categories like beauty products, and anything that you don't need is down, right? But any type of sports, home entertainment, and grocery side is up, significantly up. So that's basically why retail is in there. And the rest is somehow in the middle. So the right-hand side is the companies are much more looking in terms of looking out. So how can I utilize the opportunity? How can I even expand or acquire other companies and use the market that is currently showing for us? Now, just one more before we go into just one more thing. You know, how I just want to look in the forward in terms of, you know, what is to be expected now from the pandemic. I think we're good through the first type of wave, or through the first broader type of wave. We're not sure whether you're in the second yet, but we see numbers worldwide rising. That was the assumption initially that I had around how the crisis would work. And the yellow line you see in there with a second peak was more the not worst case, was more the okay. There could be, like, you know, a second peak that is happening just because people at some point in time become sick and tired of staying at home, sick and tired of wearing the masks. And I mean, we're social people, we want to get outside. But where we are actually at the moment is on this scenario, right? We have done the first wave, that is over. We are around 9 months into the crisis, probably. But numbers are rising. Maybe we're a little bit left of the point even. But in a number of countries, we have been reaching higher peaks than the first wave. And again, we don't know whether this is the second peak of the first wave or it's already the second wave. As clarity is not there, but this is coming. And that is when I say, be happy so far how Egypt has been doing in the crisis, in the pandemic. But also be aware, don't do the same mistake as the Germans have been. Be aloof in terms of saying, okay, you know, nothing can hit us, because a lot of my friends there were just like outside, having no masks, meeting, having parties again. And the minute you do that, the virus is still there, right? And it just does what nature has formed him to, and is doing that one. So we are here. We may even enter a third wave or a third peak in there, but for sure, a lot of the predictions are telling us that we are we still have about a year to go, and that's, I think, the bad news. But I think that's just, you know, let's keep our eyes open for that. And that's when I said we need to adapt to a longer, multi-year cycle pandemic development, and need to adjust our business model according to that. And if you take data underneath and you look into when do we expect the GDP numbers worldwide, again, not Egypt, Egypt is still growing, but worldwide, when are we against the sectors with our GDP numbers back to some sort of normality? Yeah, then in a number of these sectors, we are at a range of 2022. The white spot we've been, the virus contained scenario we just ran through. This was an older prediction of about like older, back 3 months back. This fairly old in pandemic times, but we are now in the muted recovery scenario. So we are talking about some of these GDP numbers coming back end of 2022. But in a range of sectors like art, entertainment, educational, transportation, warehouse, even manufacturing around, you know, end of 2024. And that is a fairly long cycle. And if you look in terms of, like, you know, small business contributions, small business shares, smaller businesses, so SMEs, typically don't have the longevity of holding so much, holding as long through. So you need to find a niche in terms of really getting back to operations and make profits very, very quickly if you're working in some of these SMEs. So again, challenge, opportunity. I think I leave it out to you in terms of how you see that, right? Is a glass half full or half empty? I think there's a lot of opportunity in that, but we need to understand how the future will look like in order to then put our digital strategy or our strategy against it. Not only digital, but basically our overall corporate strategy against. And I just want to pause here quickly, because I want to then transition to a phase where I want to talk about, okay, what are these trends for the next normal? What are those? So if there are any questions, please unmute yourself and just you know, don't be afraid to ask. I hope you can still hear me.
Yep, we do.
Okay, perfect.
We hear you.
Good. So I want me to continue. Okay, good. So let's look in terms of, okay, what does the future bring to us, and you know, how does it actually look? So number one is, I think, and I want to start with the society outside of the business context, because that makes there are just quite a number of changes that are coming there. So number one is, you know, working from anywhere is about to stay. Microsoft has put the company policy that people now can work from home and remotely indefinite. Dubai at the moment is pitching all the remote workers to come to a nice place where there's sunshine and they can basically have a good infrastructure electronically and they can work for there. And a number of countries, actually foreign companies, are following that and say, you know what, at least we can think of our people being hybrid workers. The great thing is, you know, I don't need to pay for office space as a company, because or have limited or just smaller office spaces. And they just work for wherever they are. Now, that has massive impact to city planning and to real estate, right? Because office space is already office space or like commercial real estate is challenged to that, because suddenly we have like much more space than we actually need. Real estate is challenged as well to an extent, because the whole notion of of the UN that there was a prediction that by 2050, about 70% of all people live in cities. I would challenge that today. I don't think that's the case because cities are expensive. Cities have worse air. It's loud and crowded. And if I can just work from home, I may just go to the suburbs or even further outside. If I'm a hybrid worker, I can like drive in the 1 or 2 hours one way once or twice a week easily. Just get a room there where it might stay overnight and then go back home where I have much more space, a much higher quality of living, much more peace. The only thing I need is the infrastructure, right? So if I think in Egypt there are lots of cities are getting planned at the moment, we need to be aware of, is it planned because there's a true need for the city itself, or is it a city in the suburbs, right? Or what will people do? So that's number one. Number two, then I want to go through a couple of the industries, give just some things that we already see and what's going to happen in the future. So healthcare, absolutely more innovation, more funding from the public sector, but also here more telehealth, right? And more remote health. That telehealth is strongly on the rise. I can also bring some statistics out there if you need to. In terms of diagnostics, predictive diagnostics is also coming. So that means that you have, if you're living in a suburb or outside, you may just have a house doctor who works with a number of remote experts together. And for diagnostics, you'll be predictively diagnosed by new tools that are available, and getting treated just where you are, and just if you have to really go to the hospital or to very specialist center, you just drive in. Telecommunication. I thought initially big winner of the crisis, but it seems that it depends on how the business model is being done. A lot of the telecommunication service providers are in the mobile field. A lot of their profits are coming from roaming, from business travelers moving to other countries and delivering roaming fees back. That is obviously not happening anymore. Etisalat has lost about $1 billion or to $1.5 billion through international roaming, and that is hurting in some parts. So the model is more data, more data on mobile, more data on the existing lines, and getting money from there. Productivity improvements are being thought, like, the whole field workers are working much more with remote experts, so you need less field workers directly living at the antennas or out at their substations or their co-location space, because you need basically just people that drive there, but they could do with remote experts and can do the maintenance. Big investments and big expectations from 5G. I know there was 3G at some point in time, beginning of 2000, and a lot of these expectations haven't been delivered as such. But I think 5G looks much more promising, given that the whole uptake of digitization has been happening. Sports and entertainment. Oh, I think that industry is really challenged. I think anything with big assets, very, very difficult. The cinemas are getting back. On the left-hand side, you see a friend of mine who went to the one of the open-air cinemas now that have been starting. This one is on the more of the Emirates on top floor. He brought his couch with him, and that is working as long as it's not too hot, but obviously in much less numbers. Virtual entertainment, I think that's the name of the game. Netflix and anybody else who brings online content or brings streaming content, or can make like a safe entertainment possible, is here on the rise. And then last but not least, high-tech IT professional services side, very important to keep the proximity to the customer through the screen, and being able to really read what the customer needs and analyzing that on a really day-to-day basis. And it depends on how efficient you are in digital sales, which is a complete different field than normal, frontline sales where you meet in person one-on-one. It's just much different. And Mahmoud, we have you on the line as well. I don't know, maybe later you can comment on this one as well. How we are changing our model as SAP in order to help our customers, but in the digital space, it's just different. Yeah, I have one more. Banking, obviously, also for banking, it's interesting. HSBC, for example, invests heavily in digital banking, and because customers don't want to come to the branch anymore. And if I would come to the branch and I can do a quick sort of in and out, that would be okay. But most of the time, I have to wait for half an hour, and I have all the people around me that are basically all also waiting with masks. It's not the most comfortable way. So digital banking and digital insurance, thinking about what risks you support is very important. And then just an overview of or a summary of what are the key trends really happening. We talked a bit about we didn't talk about the customer demand actually, right? So customer demand changing more towards online and safe service. That is clear, and that's not only B2B, B2C, but also on government services. So that requires uh, a lot of end-to-end digitalization of processes. Sounds easy, but unfortunately it's not, because just in things when you think about how do you deliver a signature to the government, and so that they know that the authentication that you're giving is the right one. How do they know that you are you, right? And how would signatory things work? Now we're getting there. And a number of governments have started looking into the digital identity cards that you can then use for transactions, right? And that authenticate you with multiple features like mobile phone and card and maybe face. That is working. Brand loyalty changing. There have never been as many customers on the move as of now. So brand loyalty was very strong, but at the moment, about 20% of consumers are changing the brands based on preference and based on convenience. Purchasing patterns, yes, also that is changing. People consume online, right? And it might go to a shop to search something, but they want to consume. But a lot of them go online. Amazon is growing as never before. And travel patterns, interesting, also changing. Either people are not traveling, or if they travel, a lot of people, like in China, when the opening was starting, people took the car instead of public transportation just because they feel safer. So we were wondering, why is oil consumption up in China, but above levels, right? It's because people are driving around with cars now and not using public transport. We talked about the workforce and the altered workforce. Also, skills obviously are changing in that. We talked about remote experts, not only in remote expert telemedicine, but also teleconsulting, teleengineering, remote expert type of situations. Definitely a field for the future. Urban to rural, I see that very strongly coming. Lower skilled jobs will more and more disappear, replaced by higher skilled jobs, but that requires education. Supply chains, the countries want to get more resilient. Some of their strategic assets should have even more resilient supply chains. We don't know when countries are closing. We have had news that some industries in China were stopping exporting to some countries because of political reasons or because of resource reasons. And countries and companies are starting to understand that they can't just rely on our global supply chains happening as before. In addition, the whole sustainability topic comes. So do I really want to have things from very far away, right? Financial resilience, yes, much more pressure, even more pressure on the balance sheets. I mean, before the financial crisis, there had been a lot of free floating money around. It was much easier to make money. Afterwards, the CFOs have been like much tighter controls around investments, but this is now tighter controls on steroids, just because we don't know how long money would last, right? And on the one hand side, and then if you look into all companies with heavy assets and a heavy asset base, right? The airline industries with the big planes, the rent-a-car companies with the car fleets. Like whenever you have assets, if your business model is like slightly shaking because of external factors, you're really in trouble in utilizing these. What do you do if you're a real estate company now and you have been heavily investing in commercial real estate, and a remote expert is just happening the market for you, right? And then last, fast and agile adopting. I think that is not only on the regulations. Regulations will adopt to all of that, but the interesting thing here for me is that the trend will be that you need more people that can change fast and that can adopt faster and embrace faster change. So that's a move towards obviously towards younger people. But that will be truly the source for or like older people who can basically, who are very mobile and very adapting in terms of like doing several things or different things during their careers. But that's going to be a strong constraint to all of us. I put some implications underneath in terms of not business implications, digital implications. I think they are with all of them like touchless, like looking in a real-time scenario, real-time environment on really what our customers are doing, and so that we can adapt to that one. Just looking whether there's anything in there that I want to point out. Probably not. Yeah, real-time remote work, end-to-end digital processes, stronger mobility. Prediction, using artificial intelligence to really automate as much as we can in order to much quicker get to our data, much quicker get to our insight, and then being able to move. And that is also supported with the time that companies need to have in order to react to these new requirements, right? You see here on the left-hand side, there are a lot of different type of processes, so different type of ways of how companies are utilize are conducting their functions, and like a lot of times. And you see here on the right-hand side sort of the frequency. How often would you do that? For example, how often would you learn about digital technology, about like as a business leader? How often would you like share, test and learn findings across the organization, right? And that has been, a lot of these have been like manual, annually and quarterly before. That all moves towards like at maximum monthly, if not weekly, right? And that requires you having the right mechanism in place in order to get that information, right? And that typically cannot work without digital, right? Or it's a very strong manual, very high manual effort. So having surveys out and figuring out, having a pulse on your employees and figuring out how they are doing is not anymore a thing that you should do like once a year or twice a year. It's actually something that you should think about like doing monthly, if not weekly. Looking at your customers and figuring out where customer demand is and how the customer demand is shifting. The successful companies are doing that now on a daily basis. Before there was maybe monthly basis or weekly basis if they were really good. Now it's daily basis, sometimes even multiple times a day. And that's what really, like, that's what gets us really on this onto the quick set. So the only way how to do this is replacing repetitive tasks with automation. And that gives us then the ability to use all of our human capital and human capacity on the high value task side. But there's also something that corporate leaders will see is that quite some money will need to go into the digital areas. So IT budgets will slightly increase, while other areas in the business will decrease. But again, we need to have the human capital on the high value task and not the lower end stuff that can be automated and will be automated. But this is now happening on steroids. Okay, again, just wanted to do a quick break in terms of just figuring out, if there's any questions around the trend, the trend side, which I find one of the most interesting things. I loved looking into the future and looking like, 5-10 years out. If there are any questions, please, again, unmute yourself or just interrupt. Let me just check again the chat, or put your question into the chat if you want to. Also not an issue at all. All right. If not, then I just wanted to give a quick overview of, what do we do as SAP and how do we react and what is our vision for our customers in coping with all of that, right? And making digital transformation or a digital strategy happening. And the good news here is we can help on all different angles to our customers, and we come in with a vision of the intelligent enterprise that we want to form. And the intelligent enterprise is built on a technology stack. I'm not being too technological here, I can promise you. I'll stay on the business side. Then on top of the technology that is enabling the whole business, a set of applications that are helping you with flawless, quick execution, that are basically automating most of your business processes across the typical silos we have in companies, across different functions, right? That sometimes talk or sometimes don't talk with each other. So we look at processes end to end. And then that works with different type of business networks in order to really get like procurement, in order to get the best suppliers, the quickest suppliers, the best material, and the lowest, the highest value for the price material into your company, right? And if I just very quickly go through that. So on the business process side, as I said, we look into end-to-end processes. There are 4 that we identified across across average companies. The first one is around sales, right? From generating a lead that sometimes or typically happens in marketing. Lead is converted, and you're basically taking an invoice, so lead to cash, all the way through. That typically touches multiple organizational units, but we are looking from that end to end, from the full end-to-end execution, and try to optimize and automate as much as we can. Recruit to rehire is the whole life cycle for HR. Design to operate is the product life cycle, like anything that basically ideates and then gets developed, manufactured in manufacturing companies until it's basically like reaches its destination, get installed, and needs to operate. And then last, source to pay, like all the procurement that is needing to get sourced and up to the point that you receive it, you're acknowledging it, it's there and in quality, and you pay for that. All right, so those are the 4 key functions that go through all of the systems. We then have an intelligence suite with all different types of automatisms and future technologies inside of the Talk Intelligence Suite, and an industry cloud, which is the new concept. Our industry solutions are all getting delivered through cloud solutions and partner solutions in there as well. So those are very industry specific solutions. That is supported with a platform that is helping you to manage all the data in real time, because you want to access that in real time, analyze it in real time, so you get your reports in real time, so you can immediately react to that one, right? And a number of different type of intelligent technologies, because you may want to innovate on your around your business model. You want to produce maybe something else next to it. You want to try out different type of payment models. You want to try out different type of services. You don't want to create that whole full stack for that. That's why we have intelligent technologies in there, in order to much quicker innovate. And then we talked about the networks. We are looking into a suite that is looking into like experience management, so we get feedback at any time of the process, at any point in time when we just want it, from customers, employees, on the product and on the brand, to immediately optimize again our product. So that is included, and the newest kid on the block, looking into sustainability and really looking into how can we make sure that everyone is safe, but everyone is also followed by any type of sustainability, the governance that you want to do in the company itself. Gets bigger and bigger at the moment, but we look into things like really calculating CO2 footprints across an execution on the value chain. So you should get later on, when you're procuring something, but you're very, very green type company, you might be able to see how much CO2 footprint the production of this part had, and how much CO2 footprint it gets until it comes to you. So you can basically not only decide on the price, but you might also want to decide on the CO2 footprint in combination to it. Okay, and then last, I think, and that is important, right? Digital strategy. I mean, let's assume you have this digital strategy and you kind of know what is working. Digital strategy is a little bit broader, right? It's not only figuring out what is the newest technology that you can apply, but it's also like figuring out what's your strategy in this digital age, and what like how do you want to do or rebuild your business model. So the business model conversation is a very, very important one, because a lot of things build upon that. And just one of the examples is I want to bring is Domino's Pizza, for example. They started very, very early on and figured out, look, we want to go the digital route with our business. We have a lot of pizza shops, but we also have pizza delivery. But they said, look, there are these delivery companies coming into the markets, the food distributors and food delivery services. They take a large portion of our share. We want to keep this ourselves. But maybe the future goes much more into delivery versus stationary. So they built these cloud kitchens. Cloud kitchens are back room kitchens somewhere at traffic hotspots where they can reach many other areas, right? But you don't have a restaurant to it. So it's a kitchen only, which purely serves for delivery. And what they basically done is, okay, they've been starting to heavily invest into their delivery application, right, to make something similar like Deliveroo, but being able to deliver themselves, and build a very, very low cost type of kitchen model. And now they are a significant winner worldwide on the F&B side, because they own their channel, they own their customer channel, and they own the delivery service, and they don't have expensive real estate. Versus if you look into Starbucks, for example, who said, okay, maybe we do like delivery, but through delivery platforms, but have the real estate. They're really struggling now with a coffee shop. Right, so that's one. You need to really figure out how do you utilize technology for the best of the business model. And then you can think of, okay, and what else? What are the other processes or things that you want to automate and want to just make faster? All right, this is the digital transformation. So always think of your digital strategy in these two parts. But then the second thing is, it's not only having the strategy and then figuring out the technology. You really need to understand and get the capability to understand what do you do with your data, right? What's the insight you can generate? I worked before with the founders of Kareem within McKinsey. Mudassar Sheikha is the CEO. And you probably know Kareem, the car driving service. I think it's available in Egypt as well. They've been starting, and after 2 years, I had a call with Mudassar, and he said, yeah, they just bought a digital a data science team in Germany from one of the universities, because what they want to do with the data that they have of the drivers that they have, and they want to do some forecasting, want to figure out how do you minimize waiting times for the customer. Right, so they use all the data basically to really figure out where are hotspots at what point in time, are customers coming, and really figure out which driver they should do they place where in order to minimize this time. So figure out the data and the asset that you really have, right? That's a competitive advantage across everyone. And by the way, they were faster than Uber by the time. They were really much better than the giant Uber. And what Uber has done, instead on top of it, they've just reduced manually their waiting times. And whenever you got an Uber cab, right, it says like 3 minutes, and you got it, and you needed to wait 5 minutes just to basically beat the competition to that one, but not to data science. Technology is also important next to data. Obviously, we talked about that. But the talent. And with talent, it means like, you know, everyone who works in the company, but also all the new talent. You need to get the feel for this, for, you know, what for data, for insight, for what can you use your assets for into the company, but you also need to get the culture of change in. And that's the most, I think that's the most difficult one, which one I want to close. So change is the only constant that will follow us from now onwards, right? And we need to be aware that we really need to adopt ourselves. We may need to find different type of jobs ourselves in terms of like, you know, I think it's a development from where we are today towards an incremental development towards the future. But we need to be also willing to learn and to change and be open about it. So in summary on today's discussion, right? The pandemic has accelerated digital transformation or digital strategy and digitization significantly, right? Egypt has an advantage of that you haven't been hit by the first wave significantly, but be aware of the second one. It is coming, and people who went through the first wave relatively unharmed are typically strongly underestimating it. There is obviously chances in the industries for fast movers and fast followers. So don't need to be first movers and fast followers. You don't need to be a first mover in order to win, but you should be fast following. Look how you utilize these future trends and what is applying to you and what is really happening over the next years. The pandemic will definitely be with us for another year, maybe another 1.5 years. Yeah? But then as behaviors has been changing, think about what needed to be done in order to satisfy future demand and how you measure demand. Think holistically about digital transformation, and not only about the technology itself, but think about the business model, how you want to change this. Think about the transformation aspect itself, and then about the people and about the data, how you use that. And last but not least, if you are having want to have any conversation or any type of thoughts that you want to share, we are more than happy to discuss with you, and we're more than happy to help you in figuring out what's where your future should be and where you want to be. And with that, I just want to say thank you, and I just wanted to open it up for questions. So it's always tough to be the first. Do I need to pick someone? Was it interesting? Is it interesting? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who wants to say something? Shireen, you still there?
Hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you, yes.
I have problems with the mic again. Question is, can we share this presentation with you, please?
Yes, absolutely. That's an easy answer.
Okay. Another thing, Dr. Ashraf just joined us today now. Dr. Ashraf, can you introduce yourself to the members?
Yep. Thank you, Shireen. Thank you, Dr. Michael. Unfortunately, I couldn't join you earlier. I am in a customer meeting right now. Just came across the same time schedule, but I'm sure you had the good presentation. Yes, I'm privileged. Thank you for the German Chamber to select me for organizing this series of IT-related topics that should be of interest to the German Chamber members. We have worked on a number of sessions. The first one is about digital transformation that we have attended today. We'll have other sessions focusing on AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, 5G and telecommunication developments, transformation in the banking sector, and next few months. And we try to make it business-oriented, not a technical session in terms of a lot of technicalities, but more of how these new technologies can help you move forward with your business in the new norm that we are all experiencing right now. And I think you had a glimpse on that from Dr. Michael's presentation today. So I just wanted to welcome all of you and thank German Chamber and thank Dr. Michael for his time. And maybe you have some questions now, right?
Exactly. We take anything, questions, comments, is it interesting? I mean, my first question probably would be if I can ask one, and please unmute yourself, right? I mean, is it interesting to you? Is that, are those the topics that you want to hear, or is this, more of the, can't hear it anymore because it's like for the last years, or for last month already, like the biggest topic that has been hanging around. Any type of opinion would be really helpful. Maybe ask an easy one. Can you unmute yourself?
I did already. but
So that
I
is
can have.
so
I
we
can
don't have a
question.
digital transformation issue. People are shy today.
Yeah, but the question is how many or who is thinking of changing the business model after the new norm that we are experiencing it now? I mean, regardless of how we are going to change it, but do you think it's time now to change and there is a need to think differently?
You can answer in the chat box.
Yeah, you can also answer in the chat box if this. Okay. I think today is the quiet day. Good. So I mean, if that, then I'll just hand over. I don't know, back to Shireen. I don't know whether you have a schedule yet when the next meeting will be.
Not yet. I will
Okay.
discuss this with Dr. Ashraf.
Yeah, and if not, then I just wanted to say thank you for your attendance. If there are any questions, I have.
Yes.
Yes. If there are any questions, I have my email address up there. You can contact me any point in time or go through Dr. Ashraf. We are working very, very close with the German Chambers of Commerce as well. I'm a member in the German Chambers of Commerce here in the UAE, and always very, very happy to help with the different communications and the different integration that we have among each other. Okay, with that, I wanted to say thank you and wish you a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Thank you, Shireen.
Thank you, Dr. Ashraf.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you.